Woo!
Meeting. There we are.
Sweet. I'm gonna post it in a couple of places.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, everyone.
Happy
Sarah's
Sunday.
Gross on a Sunday evening. So you can hear Sarah, but you cannot see Sarah.
She's in a magical gray box.
Super magical gray box.
The voice of Sarah.
I'm gonna post it in a couple of places.
Perfect.
Hello, everybody.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, I think we are ready to rock and roll. I've shared it. We'll see if we get some folks on here with us.
Awesome.
All right, so for anybody joining or kind of hopping on right now, we are doing a editing demo using Snapseed. So Snapseed is free from Google. It's available in your app store. It is an amazing program, so you can go ahead and download and work with us while I go through some of these demos. We're just going to play a little bit. I am here to kind of guide us through a variety of ways to edit with Snapseed. And then I'm going to show you kind of some before and afters and ways we approach different photos. Okay.
All right, Amanda, I'm going to make you the host.
All right.
And I'll be hanging out. I love how I unmuted myself.
Yeah.
That's like
it's just the voice of Sarah.
Only been doing this forever now. Y'all have fun. I'll be hanging out. Let me know if you need anything. I'm pumped.
Okay.
Guys.
Bye. All right. So hi, ASoP family. For those that are online with us, or you might be joining us later when you can go back and watch this. We're here to play. We're going to do a few of these in the next few weeks and over the next kind of couple of months while everybody's adjusting to our new normal, as what they say. And what a better time right now. I think we've got so much great traction with people picking up hobbies and learning new skills, and you're out and about and getting some fresh air and taking some beautiful photos on your cell phone along the way. And you need a powerful editing app. So Snapseed is a go-to for me. I'm really passionate about it because I love it. I love the versatility of the app and all the tools that you have kind of at your fingertips. So it's really a tried and true editing app for mobile phones. So we'll give it just a second, see if we can get a couple of viewers on with us. I am also here to answer questions. So if you've got some questions about particular tools in Snapseed, please let me know. We're going to kind of keep the chat box open here so I can keep an eye on that. And basically I'll work through a series of images. Snapseed for me is not really a one-stop shop. There are certain tools that I'll use based on the image. So I'll give you kind of an overview here. Basically, and let's see if I can close this for a second. You'll see the little green leaf. So Snapseed, once you've downloaded that, there's a white box with a little green leaf with different colors. And then what I personally like to do for photo editing on my phone is I like an easy workflow. I want things to be really easy to find. As you guys can see, we've got 33,000-ish photos, so probably 40 by the time there's some things in other places. So for me, if I'm going to do something in Snapseed, I like having things in these subfolders. So specifically, if you're an iPhone or Android user, go ahead and create a folder, an editing folder. So let's say you're out this weekend and you go hiking and you take 5 beautiful photos that we want to edit. You probably have taken 100, but it really comes down to the top 2 or 3 or 5. So go ahead and copy those, add those into a new folder. So We can call that Snapseed editing demo, whatever you want it to be, photos to be edited, make it easy and accessible. So as you go into Snapseed, instead of digging through 35,000 photos, or some of you out there have 60, 70,000 on your phone, some of you may only have a few hundred, but it's really easy to identify what we want to have and it not be so cluttered. So I'm a huge fan of workflow. Sarah teaches a great mobile phone photography class. I've taught several mobile phone photography classes. So part of this process is just creating a great workflow. And we talk about that with photo all the time at the school. So what we see here is kind of a few handpicked photos for this class. It's a little bit of everything. So some landscapes, some night shots, a lot of people faces. You may have family, kids. So we've got a lot of versatility here, different directions that we can do with our editing. So I'm just going to work through a series of these kind of from beginning to end, and I'll repeat the process a bunch. So if you are just joining us, again, you can kind of scan through here, pick up where you left off and go back and review a few things. So, all right, so the basis of Snapseed here is I'm going to open whatever image. We'll go ahead and start with this first one. This will be a pretty great spot. And so let's go this way. I think that was a little bit of an easier spot. Great. So the first thing that we kind of have with Snapseed is we open our image. And let's go, I'm going to this way so you can see this layout a little bit different because that might be how you see that. So we have our open image. We're going to pull that from either that folder we just added the photos to, or pull it from your photo reel where everything lives. We have our single image, and at the bottom we have three things. So we have looks, we have tools, and we have export. So the first thing that we're going to do is looks. So for those of you who may not have used Snapseed before, looks is kind of like the VSCO, all the other apps that I will say it's all the standard photo editing apps that have filters. So some things that we know about Instagram, even Facebook, how we edit photos. It's the one click, one punch, everything is done for you. Be a great starting point. So while I do like some of these filters and kind of the one-stop shop editing approach to this, I really love the power of editing with the tools. So that part's super important for me. But you can kind of click through these and see, you know, which one suits your fancy. What do you really love in the direction of a photo? One of the #1 questions I think we get from our students at ASoP that have gotten the technical end of photo down, maybe they're in the editing process now and really trying to find their style and creativity, is a lot of people look at a photo and go, yeah, I know I need to do something to it, I just don't know what. So this is a great way. You can kind of tab through and see, do you like it a little HDR? Do you like it a little grungy? Do you like it gray, dark, and moody, or really super colorful? So this becomes a really great place to start, just kind of if you are stuck. I think there's nothing wrong with kind of trying a variety of styles in here and seeing which one really works for you. Now, I have a particular aesthetic for certain types of photos that I love. I'm a color junkie. I love everything to be a little punchy, a little HDR. So I teach an HDR class. I do love HDR. It has to be well done. HDR is one of those things that if it's bad or overdone, we kind of go, ugh, and are pushed away from it a little bit. So I do think there's a fine line that we walk with HDR of it's not enough or it's just too much. So we try to find that middle ground. Personally, I love things with a little pop, a little bit of that edge, a little bit of that contrast, and sometimes that grunge. So that's a great place to start. And so that's what we'll work with our looks. So what's really fun about Snapseed is it is super user-friendly and intuitive. If you like something, you hit the checkbox. And if you don't, you'll go back and hit the X. So also here on the top right, so we kind of have that top right corner of Snapseed, you have these three buttons here. So that first one with the square with the arrows pointing to the left, one of my favorite things. So I can go here to view edits. And as I work, and I'll show you this through tools, we progress also, I can go back and see my original photo and I can tab through HDR. So if I want to go back and maybe I'm not super crazy about what I did, I'll hit the edit, go back to original. Now I'm back to my base image. So for our Lightroom users, it's a really great way to kind of keep track of that history where you can take a few steps back. So again, that's in that top right-hand corner, the double square with a little arrow pointing to the left. It's a great way to see and kind of undo those steps. So we'll work through these looks again a few times. But let's get into the tune image part and the tools of this. So the tune image will be for our photo people. It might be what you're accustomed to in terms of exposure, brightness, highlights, shadows, some things like that. So now, one of my favorite parts about Snapseed is it is a swipe up and down and left and right. So as I swipe up and down, so I start to kind of go up and down through my screen here, I have my brightness, I have contrast, saturation, ambience, highlights, shadows, warmth. So I can work through a variety of these things. Now, not everything needs to be done to this image. Overall, brightness is pretty good. It's a little flat for us. So let's go to the contrast. Once I've picked contrast from the top to the bottom, I'll swipe left and right for more or less. So if you want a really flat muted look, you could take that contrast to the left-hand side. We'll also see that bar up at the very, very top. We have midpoint at 0. So let me get here. And then you'll see the negatives. So -10, -20, all the way to -100. And then back on that right side, now we're putting contrast in. So we are adding contrast to the positive here, 20, 30, 40. Now, to keep that finesse and that where we don't cross that line of something being overdone, I think a lot of things happen in 10 and 20 points. So very rarely do we need to add 50 to 60 points of contrast to something. So for us, mobile phone editing, I know a lot of us, it's a lot of little editing. So it's not just kind of throwing the hammer at something all at once. It's just a bunch of tiny little tweaks, and you're going to have a really beautiful photo at the end of this editing process. So let's add about 15 to 20 points of contrast in there. And then we can work our way through here. Now, saturation, there's a couple of ways we're going to pop in saturation. So juice that bad boy up or totally desaturate. Now, we don't take that saturation down for black and whites. There's some really cool black and white editing, some filters that'll get us there, a black and white tool here that we'll use. So mainly only use this saturation to punch it up a little bit, add a little sauce into the mix here. Now, our ambience tends to be what finds that really cool balance of it's not quite HDR, but we're really making those highlights pop and the shadows contrast. So it really starts to give us a lot of texture in an image, which I absolutely love. Now highlights, we don't have any highlights really out of control here. I'll bring them down just to see a little bit of that water, a little bit of that sky, got a little more dark and moody there for us. So again, 10, 20 points. We aren't going all out with one thing here. Shadows. I like the shadow detail where it is. I don't think I'd change too much with this. All right, and the warmth. I'm going to go back and show you some white balance tools, but do we like it really blue and cold, or do we really love that warm approach to it? If it's dark and moody, I kind of like keeping a little bit of that blue tone, but let's see what our white balance is going to do. Again, this bottom row. So the tune image button, which will take us back to these. We have kind of an auto adjust. Now, I will say, your eyeballs are your best friend. I think that we can all be a little bit better than that auto adjust button. A lot of times, and we see this with Lightroom and other editing tools also in photo, is that sometimes that auto button, it kind of gives us an okay base, a starting point, but then we have to backtrack a lot. We do a lot of work to undo some of the auto stuff that it did for us. So I do think that you guys can make some of these small tweaks yourself without having to rely on auto. So we're going to come back to this, tools, to an image. Let's get that contrast back in. Bring that ambience back up. Saturation, we're going to pop that guy a little bit. Good. And then X down at the bottom, X if you don't like it, check if you like it. So we'll start from there. Okay, great. And then curves. So we've got our details, curves, white balance. This is going to be that sharpening. So structure, that is what we do see with HDR, can be really well done. I do love that Snapseed keeps the integrity of the photo for the most part. Now, almost every single photo editing app out there eventually will break down the quality of the image, but really, you know, bottom dollar here with Snapseed, it is one of the best in terms of retaining that quality. So we'll add a little bit of that in there. And go ahead and sharpen. So sharpen a little bit, sharpen 10, 15, 20 points if you need to. Sharpen for that web. It's going to make our photos really crisp and clean. Check if we like it, X if we don't. We'll pull through a couple of other things here. Now, our true photo junkies, you may really love playing with these curves. We kind of work off that S curve a little bit. We've got our highlights, our midtones, our low points. You can even go ahead and do an auto and see where it pushes you. So it definitely gets a little too flat there, especially for this image. I don't mind a soft contrast, so it shifted that curve just a little bit. Now, as you guys start to expand some things, you'll see ways here at the bottom. So we've got our reds, greens, blues, if you want to be very specific about that. RGB all together. So the eyeball off and on will toggle where we see this grid and that S curve. There we go. All right. Let me come back to this. Good. And then over here, we've got all of our presets. So this little guy right here, it almost looks like a deck of cards. That's where we can pick and choose exactly what we see. So definitely starts to get into that filtery feeling down the road, but I am a fan. I like the soft contrast, and I think we'll keep that. So check if we like it, X if we do not. Right, perfect. And we will come back here to our tools. Now, white balance. Just like our regular photo world, slide up and down. So temperature and tint. Temperature is where we'll start to shift this into that brown, warm, cools. Now, I do love a little bit of that cool blue tone here. Sky starts to look really cool. It definitely fits the feel of that image. And what I really love when we can keep the balance of a photo. So we still have a lot of the browns and things that are naturally occurring in our image, the rocks, the trees, but that sky got that little bit of that cool blue punchy color. The trees have that same tone. So I think that works really well. And then our tint tends to put things in that cyan and magenta world. So it really starts to go purple, magenta here, and it starts to get dingy and cyan, almost sickly there. So that's definitely not a good fit for this. We'll set that back at 0. Temperature -15, a bunch of small tweaks. Check because we like it. And let's go here for a second. Let's see how far along we are. Let's go to our edits. So if you wanted to step back, again, this is where we can start to see, you know, how many changes have we made? Where are we with the edit? Here's our original. And here's where we left it with white balance. So original and white balance. So far, I think we're okay. I'm going to keep chugging along here. Back to these now. If we needed to fix the rotation of an image, perspective, I'm going to do that on a couple of architecture shots. Expand is pretty cool. I'll show you some pros and cons of that. Some brush work here, and then HDR. So this is where we can kind of go full HDR in an image. If you haven't done too many edits at this point, you still have a lot of wiggle room. You could go ahead and go straight to the HDR button before you do any of the things that we did and just see if it gets you close. So we have 2 different options here. We've got the nature and we have the people. So there'll be some things that are a little bit different here. And then we also have under here, fine and strong. So the strong is going to really push you into that surreal, that grungy effect, that feeling, but it is kind of cool to look at. It's a really, really beautiful image for that. So really brought out a lot of the detail in the sky, in the trees and the rocks. So again, slide up and down with your finger on the screen to find these options. So filter strength, maybe we back off that just a little bit. Again, 10, 20 points. Brightness is still okay for me here. Saturation, if you want to keep making it super punchy. Now this is where it starts to get cartoony. This is where we start to kind of go, we know this has been over edited and processed, but we want to find that balance, that fine line. How far can I push it where it's still tasteful, fun to look at? But since we've already added a little bit of juice in there, I don't think we need to do that. All right, good. Let's go ahead and hit that checkbox. Okay, great. We're going to keep going. So a few of these other presets, we've got drama, vintage, the film, black and white. We'll show you that with a couple of other images here. The lens blur, the vignetting. You can see what a darker vignette does for us. So let's start to see white vignettes. I traditionally say stay away from white vignettes. It feels like, you know, the 80s pop albums, some of those bad Olin Mills photos we all had as kids growing up. So a little bit of that darker vignette. Vignette should be more of what we call that four-corner burn, where we're just bringing the eyes in, adjusting some of that detail outward in so you can really focus on that center point of that image. And then it starts to go way too far. So let's figure out, I prefer, to be honest with you guys, we'll show you this, prefer to go a little bit stronger and back off. And then if you hold that, we can kind of see. So definitely not there yet. Want to keep that detail in that left and the right. Good. Brought that in for us really, really nice. And then inner brightness. So if you wanted to pop this a little bit, which is pretty cool. And this can be moved. So I'll show you a couple things here as we get a little closer to that. We could certainly try to make that sky a little bit crazier, even if you have a little spot there. We're going to leave that midpoint alone a little bit for us. And then let's go back. Take that in just a few points here. Outer brightness. Let's adjust that just a hair back. Now, this may be one of the only tools we go a little more extreme. You can certainly push it 20, 30, 40 points if you need to. But let's leave it in that 30 range. Check because we like it. And then let's go back. So pretty much for an image like this, I'd be done after a few steps here. Here's our original. So it already started out as a really beautiful, kind of a fun photo here. But now that HDR was an old edit that I did originally on this image. We're going to go back to where the vignette was. So original and vignette. And that is a pretty banging photo. So let's go ahead and hit export. So we'll go to our export button here. And then we're going to do a couple of different things. So you can hit share. That'll take you to some of the apps in your phone or to Instagram. You can go ahead and open it in a couple of other third-party apps. I do like doing the save a copy or just exporting in general. So I'll do save a copy. It's going to work through all these processes, and then you can come back and edit if you need to. All right. So let's check our Facebook page, see if we've got other people that have joined us, and if we have any questions right now. All right. Perfect. Okay, so we'll keep chugging along. I'll show you guys a few more things. Looks like we have a couple of new viewers with us. So welcome, welcome. We are editing Snapseed, or editing images using Snapseed, free from Google. Really awesome program. No spam, no junk, no ads. It's amazing that they give it away. I'm not really, positive why, but it's such a powerful program. So I'll work through a couple of other photos, some new tools here. Let's go ahead and go to open. I'm going to go back to that Snapseed editing file that I created. So we'll go open from device, and then we'll stagger over here. Let's do a people one for a second. Let's do this. This was a really fun moment. Caught this a couple of weeks ago with my daughter. She's just playing. There's some beautiful light sweeping through the kitchen door. We decided to play with those highlights and shadows. Super fun activity if you've got little kids at home right now, especially on these sunny days. So a look at a photo like this as a base image, and I'm really going to do a little more drama. I want to bring in some of those shadows. I want to retain the detail on her, but kind of push this photo into a darker spot. Now, again, at the bottom here in Snapseed, looks, if you're stuck or you just don't know what direction you want to go with an image like this, tab through, see where it puts you. So let's go hit up portraits, which that actually helps significantly with some of that shadow detail. The smooth. Now, the only problem with the smooth is it got a little blocky around her. So kind of that transition from highlights to shadows. I got a little heavy there, but that's also a great starting point. We'll see what pop does here for us. Yep, so brought in way too much of that grunge. This would also be a great thing to kind of see, how does a black and white look? That could be really, really beautiful as a black and white and might be worth. Now we've lost way too much of our detail there. So let's go, before we go too far here, let's go to black and white. And then just like some of the other tools here in Snapseed, we have a variety of these presets. So we've got that contrast, bright. We don't want to push it personally in that direction. If you've got a film kind of thing, you love the look of film, you can start with contrast or kind of this neutral spot. So we've got the little bars with the dashes there sliding up and down and then left and right. So let's bring that down a little bit, that brightness. Contrast, pop that. Now I think my only hesitation here with this contrast is, again, it's going to make her a little blocky. I am personally not a grain person. We aren't shooting with film. Most of us, if you are shooting with film, you're probably a fine art shooter. You've got your medium formats and your old FM cameras, and you're actually shooting with film. So I think to make some of these cell phone photos look like film, I think it's a little trendy. I think it's going to pass us. So I personally stay away from that. But if you love it, go for it. You can absolutely push some of that in here, give it that film feeling. But I think we're already working with some quality issues sometimes with cell phones. So I definitely want to retain that quality if possible. So let's go back to that 2 image. So that's really home base for all of our editing here. Let's go ahead and take a peek at bringing down some of our brightness. Slide that down. Let's pop in some contrast here just a little bit. And let's see what our shadows do. So there, with that shadows, it does a much better job for me, keeping that contrast with her, that transition from those highlights to those shadows. We could warm that up a little bit if we want to. I think that's kind of cool. So there's that ultimate struggle of black and white or color, black and white or color. Do both. Just go ahead and edit them both that way. You can export it 2 different ways. So let's see if I keep that ambience in here a little bit. Now that's starting to look pretty good here. Now, if you are in Snapseed, or if you're going to come back and watch this later and you have it downloaded, even holding the screen for a second puts you in your before and after. So you can go back to that edit history, or just tab and hold on the screen for a quick second and see before and after. So that's definitely getting us where I want it to be. You can zoom in a little bit. So everything is built to be kind of that pinch and squeeze build. So we actually have a lot of detail still on her. That looks beautiful. And for those of you with the newer iPhones and Android cameras, they are amazing. And it's definitely not a replacement for the big fancy DSLRs, but man, what a powerful tool to have on us at all times. So let's go ahead and hit that checkbox. Good. Now this would be one of those that if you guys wanted to crop, we'll go to the crop tool here, show you that for a second. Good. Now you can pick your aspect ratio. So not super important anymore. I think when we were doing Instagram squares, you could potentially, have a storyboard or a blog or different layouts that you're working with. So this might be where you wanted to keep that. We could stay in a free crop where you can pick and choose where you want it to be. This is just a drag and a drop. So drag those arrows over near where you want them to be. We could probably do something fun here, kind of rule of thirds. So keep some of that blank space. Maybe even pop her in the bottom there a little bit. See if we like that. So crop out some of that data on the left-hand side. Good. And let's go ahead and export a version of this. All right, so there's before and after. Now I'm thinking maybe as we do this, let's bring those highlights down just a hair. So just enough. Let's take it all the way down. Yeah. I'm looking at the paper and the shadows there even of what it did. So I actually made them a little bit flat, but I think we could pull those highlights down a little bit and still punch in a little bit of contrast if we needed to. Good, let's hit okay there. And then let's go back. Now we can visit our black and white again. Good, so neutral, contrast. So now we've started to make a lot of loss in the detail there really around her. So we could go with neutral and let's export a copy there. We'll come back and look at all of these by the time we're done. Okay, great. All right, again, if you want to see that edit history, you've got the 3 bars up at the top. So the 2 the 2 squares and the arrow pointing to the left, we'll go to view edits and I can step back. So I can see everything, or I can go, you know what, I really loved what I did kind of right before I cropped that image. So pick that, take your arrow back, and now you're exactly where you started from. Okay, so let's do another one. Open image, open from device. Let's go to that folder. All right. Oh, this is fun. Let's do a fun one for a second. All right. So I'll do Lala. I've got my dear friend Lauren here. She's either going to love or hate me for this. Okay. So Lauren, if you're watching, I love you. Okay. So let's go to tools. I'm only going to use this one tool here in case you're curious. So this is a head pose. So you'll see, make sure I'm telling you the exact correct one here. Head pose. Yep. All right. So this guy is going to be, let's move this around a little bit. And I'm going to get you up. There we go. So I can lift a chin up or down. It's definitely a little creepy. We could change it in or out, which I don't think anybody really wants that big of a side of the face there. We can have her say, yes, this is hilarious and amazing, or no, this is not, I am not going to be your friend anymore. All right, let's X that out for a second. All right, so here's where the fun stuff is. Now, why you would need to do this, maybe if you're doing like a fashion shot or a model shot and somebody's begging you to help their chin a little bit, sure, we can make some small tweaks. You know, Photoshop is our go-to for that. It's a powerful tool for that reason, but it certainly could work on some cell phone photos for quick editing. Let's go to, we really aren't going to see anything with pupil size here for her, but let's go to the smile. I am so happy to be doing this, or not very much. So I just could do this for hours, really, to be honest with you. Facebook. All right, and then focal length will change that perspective of the head. So you could certainly do something fun with a kid, kind of cartoony, a little animated feeling. I would encourage you all to kind of sit and play with this a little bit, and let's see how wild and wacky you could make it. Let's give her a big old head and a big old smile. See where that focal length change happens. We can smush it all. Oh yeah, let's go with it. Let's go with it and let's afford it. Coming in to you, Lala. All right, and there's our before and after. Again, nothing you'd ever really give to anybody, but a lot of fun to play with. Now let's actually go, we'll do one more here. So there's my little Macadoodle. And let's see what we do here. Head pose, takes a second to load in. You're going to see these little arrows and the smile. That'll be where we change that direction. Good. Got a few more people joining us, so welcome and hello and happy Sunday. No or yes. Lift that chin up a little bit or bring that chin down if you needed to. Smile. Really big smile. Now it definitely starts to warp and bend those glasses a little bit. So not a lot of room if somebody's got some glasses on their face, but still super silly. Now, if you wanted to do something, let's go back to 0 here. Let's see, we can, yeah, you can't really push it even past 20, 17, 10, before those glasses start to bend. So there's a little tweak there. Good. All right, that's enough for that one. Let's do another fun landscape edit here. And if you are just joining us, hop in your app store, download Snapseed. edit with us. So if you want to pull a couple of photos and edit along, I'm going to do 4 or 5 more images while we're together. If you've got questions, you can throw them in our chat box. And we will keep on checking here. Let's do a night shot. So I'm actually going to do a couple here. It's kind of that iconic night shot. Now, everything that's in my photo reel here has been shot with a cell phone. So you can certainly do some really, really beautiful editing from camera images to the phone. It takes a little bit of work to get them there unless you're tethering or you're doing Wi-Fi, kind of that Bluetooth stuff. But most of you guys, I would say most of our DSLR users for the school have gotten to the point where we've downloaded Adobe and Lightroom Express and some of those things. So if you have that, great. I don't think that is really what you have to do with this, but this is a fabulous tool for our cell phones and DSLRs. So, but all of these have been shot with my cell phone. So, and I don't even the high, latest and greatest cell phone. It's an iPhone 8. Those of you with the new iPhones, man, it is just spectacular. So I think you'll have a lot of fun with this. So again, we can go to looks, just kind of go, hey, here's the different options that we have. Do I want it dark and moody, or do I want it bright, balance? Do I like that balance in color and detail? Now, as much as I loved the dark heavy on the one image that we just did, I think keeping this a little more vibrant, some of those blues, keeping the detail with the goddess, I think that would be a really great balance if we can find that. HDR could get us there. So that's another option. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's go to tools. Let's go to HDR scapes for a second. So let's see through these if there's any that we like. So strong, fine, people, nature. And you know what? To be honest with you, I don't know that I'm super crazy about the HDR. We'll keep our detail here. It's not bad with the cell phone. And also for our photo enthusiasts, there are some really, really cool apps where you can control shutter speed. You can do some slow exposures with your phone. I've done some painting with light demos with my phone. So there's some really, really cool tools at our fingertips. And I think we're going to start to see that shift with all camera phones eventually having full manual controls like a DSLR, like a camera. So to be able to do a 10-second exposure, I needed an app for this because my phone does not have those built-in tools, but there are some great options out there for us. All right, so let's go back to tools. Now, here's where, for some of you that might not be HDR people, you may kind of love the glowy feel here, and that could actually work beautifully, keep it smooth, a little dreamy. I think that would be really neat. So we may come back and visit a couple of these. Again, we're just pinching and zooming on the phone. I really, really want to keep the highlights on her in check, but allow us to see the detail and the color there on the foreground. All right. If you've got a particular style in your editing that you like, if you're that more that muted matte look, there's some great options here. Drama starts to break down that quality, maybe that background. So let's do a couple others. Let's see, our vintage people, there's something for you here. If you have a particular aesthetic that you try to keep on your Instagrams or your social media. Now, what's really fun here is that kind of tells me, do I like adding some of that warmth in a little bit, or do I like keeping it cool and blue? Definitely has that matte finish to it. Okay, let's go back 2 more here. There's our vintagey stuff. So again, something for everybody here, depending on your style. Grunge. Got all of our options there. And that definitely pushed us into too dark for this. All right, so I'm going to do it my old school way here. Tune image, brightness. We can pop that a little bit. So again, I'm finding the balance of detail in the foreground, bright and controlled on her. I don't think I'm going to add any contrast to this yet. I'm a saturation junkie. You can never have too much color. although this will start to go cartoony quickly. And typically what we'll see with cell phones, let me see if I can zoom in any more here. These are the areas that will start to break down. So phones aren't as forgiving with colored lights, LED lights, neon, things like that, that are really funky temperature colored or exposure wise. So there's not a lot of room for forgiveness there once that detail starts to go away. So the saturation really takes and removes that. It really kind of, we lose all of our detail there. So I want to keep that in mind as I go. And even if you were to desaturate that a little bit, that's amazing seeing the detail that comes back versus adding too much in and this just all gets blocked up and I can't see it anymore. All right, ambience. Let's go back now here and see that little bit of that HDR feeling, that glow. Probably put in about 15 points of that. Let's bring those highlights in a little and see. And now they're glowing. So I'm going to get us over to a little bit of a better spot here, because that's really what I'm going to look at for a second. All right, so here they're glowing, glowing, glowing. And then everything's a little flat. So we'll bring that down about 20 points. Shadows. Now, do we want to keep the detail kind of dark and blocky back there? Let's go back to shadows. So we see it. Not a good look for this. So that's really the negative with cell phones, is once we start to expose for that shadow detail that's never there in the first place, it'll just kind of become grainy and pixelated, and it's just fake data back there. So we don't really even see any of that, and I don't want to see it. So we'll keep it dark back there. Punch those in just a little bit. Now, if you want to add a little bit of warmth, that could be really pretty to warm her up. Not be so cold and blue. We've got plenty of blues, foreground, bottom. Good. And there's really not a lot that we can do here with her, just because it was shot with a slow exposure. Color's pretty balanced. We've got some great detail here. I would not add a lot of vignetting. The only other thing that we could do here for you guys is under our brush. This is where we can do actually old school dodge and burning. If you came from a darkroom or you've done film printing before, developing and printing, we can do some of that dodge and burn. We do that in Photoshop and even in Lightroom with the adjustment brush. So if you are a Lightroom Photoshop user, kind of think of this as your adjustment brush. So it's a spot here. Let's to make this easy to see, let's take our exposure down, 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 down. And then this is what it starts to look like. So I'm going to paint, we're going to X that out. I'm going to do that, but just so you can see what's happening. Let's do dodge and burn. Eraser, let's go negative. And we can start to darken her. I know this is a little tricky for you guys to see. Make that a little bit bigger, but I am able to just paint in super subtle. So before, let me get that locked in. Before and after. So I was able to actually paint some of those highlights down without affecting the whole overall image, which is really, really cool. All right. And then let's tweak that white balance a little bit. So let's see as I go temperature and tint, again, a little more yellows and blues under temperature, and then tint pushes us more magenta and cyan on the one side. So it really starts to go to that green blue direction. Let's zero that out. Temperature. Now, she's kind of beautiful, warmed up a little bit. As much as I love blues, I really, really love seeing that warmth come in on her. And I think it's a good look for this image. We have that balance of that warm and cool, the color wheel, some of the things that we love aesthetically in an image. All right, so let's go back. This one's not as extreme as some of the other photos, but we've made a balance in the color. We've brought in the detail. We've got the shadows where we need them to be, so we don't see all of that gross kind of funky detail in the background. We went and dodged those highlights on her and warmed her up a little bit. So, and to think this all came from a cell phone, really awesome. So let's go ahead and export this. We'll check in with our viewers. Hi, we've got some really fun people. Hi, Gabby. And hi, Leslie. I've got a couple of neighbors on here. Hello. I've got some moms who may be editing photos of little ones, or Gabby's joining us from Brazil. I love technology. You are missed. So if you guys want to hop on, download Snapseed free. I'm going to do a couple more images, and then I'll stick around for a second, answer any questions that you guys have. You can certainly come back and watch this at a later date if you were joining us. So again, it's just a go-to for me. It's on our phone. It's fast. It's easy. I kind of have this approach of, let's say we go out and shoot this weekend and have fun, flag a few photos, make them favorites, copy them into a folder. So go ahead and say, this is going to be my editing folder to pull from. So I'm not looking through 33,000 photos. I'll show you what that looks like. So here, I would not want to scroll through all of these. So with that, I come down here. So here's my editing demo. This will be the folder that I pull from. So I'm going to show you guys a couple more here for my architecture junkies. So if you love shooting buildings and architecture, we have that kind of classic tilt that buildings do. Verticals aren't straight. It's that perspective control. So there is a perspective button here. I don't think it's as forgiving as Photoshop and Lightroom is, but it certainly gives you that opportunity if you wanted to straighten something up. You can kind of shift that around. You can shift the scope of this building and that landscape a little bit. So I don't think finding these true vertical lines keeps that building in perspective. So if we were to actually straighten it on a vertical axis like we do in Photoshop and Lightroom, it really gets kind of cartoony and not true to the eye. So we could come back though and do a little tweak for it. If we wanted to stand, kind of the churches tend to do that, really tall, narrow buildings kind of do that leaning over thing. So we could stand it up a little bit. It doesn't have to be perfect, but in that world of, let's slide that in a little bit. It could certainly be better for some of your buildings. All right, so now let's come in here. Your scale, and this will auto scale for you, but your scale will be where you fill in how much of that you need. So it's definitely still leaning. We've got that tilt that we see in architecture, but we did stand it up a good amount and it's not as much happening there. Now, when you see, we've got the kind of warped little kind of square there. That's where that tilt perspective change is. The box next to it will be the fill. So whether we have a black scale or a white scale or a smart scale, it'll add content in for you kind of on its own. Let me see if I can create that so you guys can see what that looks like. Let's go to free. So let's say we ended up with that. So it's actually done a smart scale for us. Let me see if I can, let's lose that for a second. It's done a smart scale for us to try to fill in its own content, which is really crazy. So let's come back here to perspective. Boom, boom, boom. Stand that up a little bit. That's what it's filling in. So where we would normally see, let's see if we can go dramatic with that, those little corners, it's added in what it thinks that content should be. So what it did here for us was put two signs in. Is it passable? Probably. Is the average person going to zoom in on a cell phone photo? Probably not. But for me, you don't need that much of a change. So I just leave it to the smart scale or go ahead and just scale that image in yourself. All right, so let's go back to this. See what happens with some of the funky editing. Again, HDR girl through and through. So that actually did look pretty good. So we'll come over here, tools, HDR escape. Oh, did see a little bit of that drama. Might not be the right image for it, but there's a time and place. So you could take that filter strength down a little bit. Let's pop some saturation in there. Bring it up a little bit. Yeah, we'll keep that. We'll go through here, white balance. Add a little bit of those yellows in there. Oh, we could go yellow or blue. Let's go a little bit of yellow. Yeah. And then we can come back here. Ooh, forgot to check that. We've got a couple other people. Hi, Mary. Hello, hello. Let's take some of this warmth, pop that in, a little bit of that sun feeling. Goes too magenta, don't worry about that. Stay out of that zone. Saturate it, yes. So now it really starts to feel like morning lights. And then I'll just hold this over. Actually did a pretty good job keeping that detail too. So before, after, before, after. Now, again, the perspective is not professional, certainly not something we would shoot a job for and deliver that to somebody. But for your average traveling photos, you could spend an extra couple of minutes on this and really work on that scale. But it really turned it into a beautiful edit also. So we've got some fun color there, that morning light. It doesn't feel so flat. Let's export that. We'll do a couple more. All right, we've got a few other viewers with us. Open from device. All right, so let's play with this for a second. You can play with both of these because I think they might be kind of relatable where we're all at right now also. Classic Jackson Street. We shoot this with, you know, the big boy cameras all the time. I think if you are a photographer in Atlanta, you have at least been to Jackson Street once or twice. Even if you visited Atlanta, I think you've probably at least seen that shot. If you've not been to Jackson Street and you're just joining us, finding us through Facebook, or you just happen to love making photos with your cell phone, this is that Walking Dead poster shot. It's just Rick on the horse with no cars. So this is an iconic kind of a landmark to Atlanta now. So it's really neat to see if you ever drive through Atlanta on a Saturday or Sunday, if it's beautiful or if it's storming, it is just that whole street is lined with photographers. So if for some crazy reason you haven't been out there, go. It's absolutely just a really beautiful place. Now, this could be something that I need to tweak it a little bit. I don't know that it's worth changing the perspective, but we can straighten and we can change the angle and the skew of things. So that's really helpful for this. So just want to fix that skew just a little bit. And then let's pull this in, straighten that. We'll give it a good crop because I want to keep it nice and tight there. Be good to people. I think we all need that message right now. Love keeping those buildings up in the top there too. Be good to people. All right, so go back here now for some of the drama people. This could be a really great way to get that in. If you love that grungy, punchy, kind of desaturated feeling, that might work. You could take and do your own. So kind of customize that filter strength. Now, this is one, as much as I'm a color junkie, I think we need that dark and moody and gray, and it's that rainy day feeling. It's kind of an ominous thing. So that might be kind of cool to explore those options on both sides. Let's come over here. If you are a film, if you love the grainy, the film feeling, it does start to feel vintage. Definitely puts us in that world a little bit. And I don't know that I love desaturated so much as just not full of color. And so there could be a couple of great options in here for us. Again, check it if you like it, exit if you don't. Everything is built to be a swipe up and down and left and right. So really user-friendly once you get in here. Let's pick some tonal contrast as well. Let's kind of see what we start to get here. You've got your highlights, your midtones. Pull this in. I don't think that's doing too much for us. Don't have a ton of highlights in there. Let's X out of that. We'll go back to one of these presets for you. The film noir. And actually, it does start to feel familiar. Little movie poster feeling. I kind of like this black and white look too. It's a great little message. Okay. Let's do two more here. Got a couple other things to show you guys, and then we can wrap it up. Let's take us into the black and white world here. That's kind of cool. Something for everybody here. I think I like this. I do like the black and white for sure. Good. You can pop in a little more or less of this contrast as you need it. Did a pretty good job for us the first time though. And let's make it a little bit brighter. Good. And then we can hit that. We can come back and try a vignette. So again, white vignette, hello 80s, 90s. And then bring that in just a little bit. Now, this is what's really cool here. I can move this vignette point around. So let's say we do a traditional vignette where the four corners come outward in. That really starts to make that be good to people much darker. So let me show you what that looks like. Then I start to lose that detail. But what I could do is keep that heavy vignette so the sky looks like that and the buildings look pretty cool. And then I can drag this down so it's no longer affected. So I kind of get the best of both worlds here, that I keep the detail there at the bottom, but that heavy vignette stays. I'm gonna roll with it because I really think that's fun. So here's how far we've come with that image in just a couple of super short clicks. Again, if you're just now joining us, or if you've got a couple of questions or you're playing along with us, top button, 2 squares with the arrow to the left, that's how I can step back. So I can come here and go to view edits, and I can see that whole process. I fixed the skew, we've cropped it a little bit, went black and white, did the heavy vignetting. I'm gonna roll with it and export a copy. Okay, awesome. Let's power through a couple more of these. Now, well, let's do that for this image. So one more tool. I think this is just absolutely one of the coolest things. I teach a product and food class, and we teach a specific product and food class also to mobile phones. So sometimes it's really tough just a cell phone to make a cupcake look amazing. And so much of photo and people really loving images comes down to depth of field. So now I will say the newer iPhones, the portrait mode, you're really able to control that background blur, the depth of field. But if you can't, let's say you just have an average cell phone shot and you have what you have, we could come here. Let's go down to lens blur. Perfect. Now, this is one of my favorite things. I could spend hours editing with the lens blur tool. All right, so this is built to be drug around. So whatever we want to keep sharp, want to keep that blue point as close to that as possible. I'm going to move it up just a little bit for this demo. Now, it is a pinch and a squeeze. So I'm just changing the relationship of what I need to be sharp. Let's go long here for this and drag it down a little bit. And rotate this. There we go. Keep that. Now again, swipe up to see those changes. Let's go crazy. Look at that. So all the way to one side. Now, can't really see the detail. Don't know it's Atlanta anymore, so I probably would not go that hard. But we definitely start to have an impact and keep that message. So transition is going to, I'm going to show you this because it's a little easier to explain that, where we start to see that sharpness into the fade and that depth of field. But I actually like that hard transition from really sharp message here in the foreground to out of focus in the background. Our vignetting can happen here as well. So if you wanted to push a little more vignetting, now we have already done that vignetting where I could move that around. So we've kind of got those control points there. So I would not do vignetting here. Let's lock that in. And I think that is a really cool photo. I'm going to go ahead and share that on the Facebook tonight too. So if anybody wants to pass along that message, I think it's a great message for us today. Save a copy. Perfect. All right. So a couple more here. Open from device, editing demo. Now let's do this guy for a second. Boom. Again, another great photo. I'm a huge sucker for skies and that golden hour light and a little bit of color. Let's do tools. I'm gonna skip over that. Now, again, I'll go back here for our people. These looks are the presets. That's what you know. In Instagram, the VSCO filters, all of the kind of, hey, I've got this really fun editing app. That's what they traditionally all do. I do have that last edits button. So if I were editing a series of images, let's say I had 4 images of the photo that I just edited, it might be great to go ahead and hit that last edits button and see if it's going to apply those changes to the same photo so you don't have to do that groundwork all over again. But this is going to be that, hey, which direction do I want to go? I think it's really great to hit all of these. Kind of cool with a little bit of that glow, but there's that HDR that I'm a sucker for when done right. And then that's kind of cool. On a different, starts to feel like early morning. So very, very different there. I'm going to X those out. Let's hit this up. Woo, probably way too much there on that one though. So we may have to do this by hand. So let's do our tune image. Let's come back here. Bring this down just a hair. Pop this contrast just a little bit. Saturation, jazz that up. We've got some ambience. We'll start to pull that in. Gives us a little bit of that healthy glow that I'm okay with. Highlights are okay. We'll add a little bit of warmth to this. Check that. Good, our details. Let's go add some of this structure in. So the structure tends to be that more of HDR on our own. And not so much those HDR presets. So when we were in the HDR presets, it really was too much and kind of that we've lost that line of what's passable. So here, that structure, I can put that in or soften it. So personal preferences, I tend to love a little bit of that hard grungy. I love the detail in the clouds this way. Again, sharpen if you need to, boom, boom. Let's pop 2 things over here. Now, there's a whole glow preset. So if you really love that, ladies, don't go too crazy with this with your skin. I think we all look at photos now and know when somebody's kind of erased everything on their face, but it's certainly pretty for 1 or 2. So you could play around with that if you needed to. Let's go take and find our vignette. Again, we can move this point around. So what might be really beautiful is if I bring this in and set that vignette to everything except that flag. Obviously, we're not going to go that far, but that'll kind of give you an idea of, do we need to make this bigger or smaller? So I am okay with doing a really hard change when it comes to size, especially since this is pinching and zooming. So I can make a couple of adjustments here and really figure out, all right, now I can back that down, but I know what I'm editing and what I'm making the changes on. All right, before, after, couple super quick clicks, not overthinking it, and have a really, really beautiful image. Now I will take, I'm going to do 1 or 2 other tweaks here as we finish up and show you guys this. So we can do something very cool here. There's a double exposures button. And that's where I can add in another image. So let's come back here. Let's think of, we could even add this guy in if we wanted to. All right, so I've got both of the images in here now. So let's do this. Start to see some of these. It's lightened, darkens. We've lost a little bit of that. Go by default here. Cancel this. So that bottom button with the image and the plus, that's where we add that second photo. The eyedropper tool is the opacity. So how much of that image is blended in. And you know what's kind of crazy is I really do think I love more of the city with the flag. And this is I can pinch and zoom that one main image here. So I don't know that I need the be good to people. It's a little busy, but that is pretty cool to see the Atlanta skyline back there and that really cool sunset. So let's leave that. I can tilt it if I need to. So we'll get that in kind of right, find a good spot for it. Let's see, it's going a little crazy here. And you can kind of determine how much or little of this image you want to see in. Bring that down a little bit. Really cool. Okay. And that just closed out on us. All right, let's do that one more time. Perfect. And we'll go ahead and finish this last. Oh, there it goes. Okay, good. Great, great, great. So we at least have that last one. Perfect. And let's finish out with one more colorful night shot. All right, so checking in on our chat box and our viewers. Thank you all so much for clicking and watching and all the stuff that we're doing right now with ASoP, and especially these lives. we know that it's a little crazy at home and all the time that we've had kind of behind our screens and computers. So we just want to get some of this content into your homes and make this fun for everybody. So let's see where this takes us. We could definitely go a little bit of that punchy color. Looks pretty good there. Might be neat with a little bit of a glow here too. Too busy for a black and white. So I kind of already know that there's too much happening for that black and white world happening here. Let's see what some of these vintage things do for us. Could kind of feel old school carnival a little bit. There's not a lot of stuff that really dates an image like this. Things are so small, rides are pretty traditional. So this could be something from 10 years ago. 15, 20. Definitely start to get that ghostly kind of effect. There's all your old film. Let's come in here, tools. Under retro lux. Okay, good. So let's go back here. Tools and vintage. See if we like a little bit of that color fade. Before, after. It went ahead and gave us a little bit of vignetting. You can see that here. The brightness. Let's go back and pick a couple others. Kind of like that soft focus that it pushed in here too. So that's really neat to see. I think we could probably put a little bit more of those browns in there. I think that's really neat. Again, swipe up and down to see what has happened. So here we've got our style. More of that warmth. And then it gave us a vignette already. So we can that. Let's export that. Just because I love it. Let's see. Let's backtrack to view edits. Let's go back to our original for a second. Tune image, brightness. It's going to be pretty good where it is. Contrast looks okay. We can pop a little bit of that. Remember, the goal with this, a lot of little tweaks make a really big difference. Pop some saturation in there for us. That ambience, I think, is going to be pretty amazing here. We'll bring down those highlights just a little bit. Shadows are actually okay. We could see we lose way too much detail, but I think we could bring those in just a hair, maybe about 10. See, do we like it warm or cool? Tough call. I like the yellows and the oranges and all the color in the background though. So probably I'm going to tweak some of that and keep it. All right. Good. Let's check because we like that. Let's go to our details, structure, sharpening, pop that in a little bit. Tools, let's go to our white balance. Yes. Yes. Check that. Now we could do something pretty crazy. Let's try a lens blur here. And let's keep that focus here. Again, it's a pinch and a zoom. So you're literally just taking this and making it bigger or smaller as you need it to. It could be fun to kind of see just that sign and some of that ride there and some people. So we could keep them. It starts to feel like kind of the miniature photography, some of that, or we have that kind of shift in what's in focus, out of focus. So let's take that blur strength. Let's crank it up a little bit. Yeah, that's really fun. There's that transition. So the transition is from how sharp and focused things are into that out of focus, really how hard that is. So let's make that, and then we can add a little bit of that vignette in. But you know what, let's do it the hands right here. Gonna leave our vignette alone. I'm gonna leave that. It feels tiny, very miniature, like the old Christmas kind of scenes with all the little tiny ceramics that I'm sure somebody in your family has. All right, we'll finish this up here. Vignetting, again, remember this pen can be dropped. It's what we call a control point. So all of the changes will happen around that image. Outer brightness, and then white vignetting, which you want to stay away from. This could also be really helpful if you have a hot spot in an image. So let's make it a little more dark and dramatic. Keep it here. And then I'll also show you, we've got our inner brightness. So how much of this is affected? So we really find a super, super cool balance, but definitely a really, really fun image. Let's finish this out. We'll do our before and after. Before, after. So we went from really crummy cell phones, just a quick screen grab or just a quick shot, into a super beautiful, awesome edit. I'm going to save a copy. And since nobody has any questions, I'm going to go ahead and just kind of wrap it up. But again, thank you guys so much for tuning in, for watching all of our Facebook Lives. We have a variety, a whole series on our website. If you guys want to head to Atlanta School of Photography, there's a lot of really cool workshops. We start our June sessions this week. So we actually have some photo 1, photo 2 classes. I've got a portrait class on Thursday. Really, really great stuff up on the website right now. We're also doing e-learning. So there will be it's kind of a different approach to how we've been doing our online classes. It's more of a work at your own pace, a little more one-on-one time with an instructor. So we have a whole tab for that. For those of you, I'm Amanda Gardner. I'm with a crazy crew, the COL Collection. You can go to the colcollection.com or COL Corporate for our corporate and commercial work. So definitely go through and look through both of those pages and come take a class with us. So really great being here with you guys on a Sunday night, and hope to see you guys all again soon. Bye.